37 years at KDKA Television, nearly 50 overall. That's the career of Paul Martino, who will head into retirement. But before I do anything about this conversation, Paul, we're going to talk about the hairstyles. They have changed. The eyebrows have changed at times, too, over the years. This is what happens in 50 years.
It was the 90s. It was blow drying and a lot of product.
Well, we still do that.
And this is my last time on television. I'm going to tell all the secrets. You and I go to the same salon.
We do.
Okay? We get good treatment. Sonia Torrey.
That's just part of the equation when it comes to doing what we do.
Yeah.
But first of all, congratulations. And
thank you.
That's a tremendous career, especially in this business. Longevity is sometimes you seldom see people on the air for this long. We've been lucky here at KDKA. Of course, Stacy Smith retired a couple of weeks ago, and now you're headed down that path. I just want to ask you about your career, looking back. What's it been like for you after all these years?
It's been a marvelous run. I never saw the end coming, but eventually it does. I started out as a brash young kid going down to Southern Illinois University, and I said, I want to be an anchorman. And they put me on television there when I was 18 years old, WSIU-TV. I wasn't very good, but I thought I was. And I worked in Davenport, Iowa, Quincy, Illinois, Mobile, Alabama. And by the way, when I worked in Mobile, your parents used to vacation down in Pensacola. They would watch me on the Mobile station. So when I came here, they welcomed me. They acted like they knew me, and your family has been wonderful to me over the years.
Well, they feel very strongly about how you've treated them over the years, too. And my mom and dad made a point of telling me that, absolutely. All right, let's talk about being here in Pittsburgh. 37 years. Again, longevity is a really tough thing in this business, but you've been able to start and finish here. Right off the bat, you came here in 1984, Paul, and you had a major story in 1985, and it just so happened to be one that we were involved in also with the Pittsburgh Pirates and the drug scandal, which was a national story, and big names were associated with it.
It was the biggest story in the country.
All doubts about this case's link to Major League Baseball were erased today when prospective jurors were handed a list of 10 current and former Major League Baseball players who may be called to testify.
And I was rubbing elbows with the CBS, NBC correspondents, the New York Times, Sports Illustrated. Everybody was covering this story as Major League Baseball stars like Keith Hernandez had to get on the stand and testify under oath about their cocaine habits. And these teams actually had dealers traveling with them, providing them with cocaine. It was really a widespread problem, centered largely here in Pittsburgh. That's why they had the trial here with Dale Berra, Dave Parker. You may recall the other names involved.
Rod Scurry was one of them.
Rod Scurry had a serious problem. Right. And it was a black eye on baseball, but a major opportunity for me. I appeared all over the country on these stories as we feed out to our affiliates.
Paul Martino was in that courtroom when the verdicts were read. Paul?
Ray, the verdict came after 8 hours of deliberations, but Curtis Strong may not be the only one in trouble. His attorney was cited for contempt of court, and now both men will have to file appeals.
And that was one that lingered around here for an awful long time because it involves so many people. When you have a national story that becomes, or a local story that becomes a national story, you're constantly on it, and you were on it. You did a great job covering it. I want to ask you also about the tornado. We very seldom have weather issues around here, but that was also a big one in the 1980s.
Well,
Albion?
Oddly, it happened about the same time as the cocaine trial. So, the same CBS crews were in here. We continued to work and went up to Albion.
This is all that remains of a medical center in the middle of town.
And the town was wiped out. And there was the famous interview with the 16-year-old girl.
Albion's gone.
And Albion was gone. I got a chance to go back there 30 years later and meet some of the people I'd interviewed earlier, and the resiliency was a wonderful thing to see.
30 years later, and the painful memories of that day still haven't faded, nor has the spirit of the survivors who jumped in and did what they had to do to bring back Albion.
Well, those are memories that linger on, not good ones, certainly, because you typically have to go out and cover stories that maybe are uncomfortable for a lot of people. If I ask you the hardest or most difficult interview you ever had to do, what would that be?
I think it's always when someone's child has been killed, or either accidentally or by a predator. Those are the things that you never forget. Also, the Pan Am Flight 103, the bombing over Scotland. I became very close with the Johnson family. They lost their daughter, and in fact, I just saw them recently, and they have been very resilient, and they've really grown from this experience, and we've become close. I traveled to Washington, D.C. with them for some hearings.
A small delegation of the victims' families met with President Bush at the White House today. There, they learned that U.S. airlines will soon be getting new X-ray equipment that can detect that plastic explosive that blew up Flight 103. It was of little consolation to the families, however, many family members saying it's too little, too late.
And I had just had my first child, my first daughter, when they lost their daughter. So that one really hit me.
I can understand that. You're an investigative reporter by nature when you're out in the field. You've done some great stories. All of you out there in TV land would remember you paid for it.
The A's are 193, the nays 0.
As each legislative day winds down, your local representative might be making dinner plans to spend some of the $109 a day allowance taxpayers give them for meals and lodging while they're in the Capitol.
And it was a series that went on and won a lot of awards, and it brought down a lot of politicians who were using taxpayer money for a lot of things they shouldn't have been using taxpayer money on. How did that come to be? Was that your idea? And I imagine after a while, the last thing people wanted was a knock from Paul Martino on the door.
First of all, we're still paying for it. Let's be clear, a lot of these practices continue today. But we had an investigative producer, Stu Samuels, who had worked in state government. And he had seen the abuses, and he knew where to find the records. And we got a hold of those records, and you just can't, it boggles the mind.
According to our research of Senate records, the Democratic Appropriations Committee spent more than $21,000 on food and drink at the Maverick. The cash register jingled 74 times. The average check came to $285, all in the name of legislative business.
How many times do you want me to say it? It's not exorbitant.
Like we had Senator Vince Fumo from Philadelphia. In just 1 year, he spent $20,000 at a steakhouse in Harrisburg, okay? And on top of that, we're giving him meal money. He's taking the $20,000 out of some special fund he had. Fumo eventually went to prison. He had billed the state for vacuum cleaners. He had a 3-story townhouse. We bought him a vacuum cleaner for each floor of his townhouse, and it went on and on and on. You know Mike Vion very well. You know, Mike was billing us for cases and cases of Rolling Rock beer. I see him once in a while. He jokes about the beer. And it was amazing. But they were double dipping on expenses, going out to expensive meals, charging their special accounts, and then pocketing the meal money, the per diems we give them. And that's just the beginning. You know, we gave them luxury cars and plane tickets and on and on and on.
And this was all before social media. You can imagine today if it was on.
So that's probably the biggest reaction to any story I've ever done. But nothing became of it. It continued. Eventually, Tom Corbett becomes Attorney General. Now he's got subpoena power. And many of these guys went to prison after that.
You also had some fun stories. Now, we talked about the drug trials and how it was a negative black eye on Pittsburgh, but you were also there, as we all were, in 1991-92 when the Penguins went on the first of Stanley Cup runs that now have equaled 5.
The fans began screaming the moment the team bus arrived. It continued for about 90 minutes.
You remember those situations well, and I don't think anyone can ever imagine what it's like when you're right there, coming back from a Stanley Cup championship, all the people at the airport, all the celebrations that ensued. What was that like for you?
Well, Bob, we didn't know about Stanley Cups when we won that first cup in Minnesota. And Stacy Smith and I were standing on the ice live, and they start rolling out the cup, and it just hit me. I'm like, holy cow. The cup is coming to Pittsburgh.
Most unique trophy in sports, I
think. Yeah. What a summer that was. I saw Kevin Stevens at a bar on the roof at Froggy's, and there was a line of people to come and buy him a drink and see him. And then everybody's trying to see the cup. The cup was all over the city. Now what do we have? 5, 6?
5.
Yeah, 5. But the first one was a big deal. The second one was in my hometown of Chicago.
That's right.
I grew up with the Chicago Blackhawks, but by then I was so attached to this team and the guys. What a team it was. And remember, they blanked the Blackhawks 4-0. I mean, that's unheard of in a Stanley Cup final.
Well, that's when they had Yager, Lemieux, Francis. They had an all-star team on the ice.
Right.
And the disappointing thing was they got knocked out by the Islanders the next year, where I thought it was their best year. But that's the ups and downs when it comes to
Stevens
sports.
got that bad injury.
Yeah,
We're getting in the weeds now.
Oh, that was a tough one, right?
Yeah.
But those are, from someone who, covers these kinds of, not those kinds of stories, but stories about misuse of funds, things that are not necessarily happy. It had to be nice to be involved in a story like that one, where the whole city came together. It was a citywide unification. And it's a totally different kind of animal to cover.
When I go around the city, people don't ask me about death and destruction or things like that. They want to know about the cup. Are we going to win the cup this year, Paul? What do you think?
From Eyewitness News, this is Newsbreak.
Good morning, I'm Paul Martino in the news.
So let's talk about you, the anchor. It's difficult, I tell people all the time, when you're talking to a camera lens, but you have to imagine there are a lot of people, thousands of people out there watching. What was the thing that you wanted to do most when you went into someone's living room delivering the news at night?
I have a thing, and when I'm out reporting too, I think of Joe and Mary Beer Can. Who's sitting at home watching us? Okay, research has shown it's not the very lowest educated, it's not the very highest educated, it's all those folks in between. And so I try to use a common touch. I try to use more conversational language, and I try to talk to them, not just read a story.
Paul Martino is live in the Strip District with the details. Paul?
Bill, this used to be part of an illegal video poker machine. It was one of about 70 taken in raids at various city bars over the past 3 years. This one, according to the evidence tag on here, came from a place called Kenny's Bar, but now it joins the heap. About 2 truckloads of these machines were brought here this morning, smashed to smithereens by a bulldozer. The city wants to get rid of them.
And hopefully sometimes I was successful at that.
No, I think you were very successful at that. And that's the thing. I think that's the good advice you can give every young student trying to come into this, is just be yourself.
Who's
right?
listening to us? Or I tell young people, tell me a story like we're sitting on a bar stool. Just tell me the story. Don't get so much in the weeds about what the police report says. Yes, the facts are important, but it's not just that a guy that police are investigating a shooting. It's some poor guy is dead on the street. That's the story. I mean, so that's what I try to do.
And those emotions are tough to get through sometimes. Have you ever gotten yourself involved emotionally in a story? I mean, you've described some that you've covered. Because I know myself, I'm a pretty emotional person, and if you cover something that triggers an emotion, it's tough to keep your sense about you on the air.
I broke down and cried in Albion, what we alluded to earlier. I was pretty tired. I had a grueling schedule covering the cocaine trail. Then I spent some long hours traveling back and forth to Albion. And a woman one day was standing in front of the pile of rubble that was her house. And she said, Grandma used to knit over there, and we had our bird cage over there. And I lost it, and we embraced, and I wept with her. And CBS shot that video when it was on the CBS Evening News. That's not why I broke down. I didn't even know they were shooting it. But so yeah, and when Dick Caligiuri, the very popular mayor here, died of a rare illness.
Paul Martino is covering the official mourning today. He joins us now with more. Paul?
Patty, I really don't think that there is any more that can be said about this amazing public outpouring of grief and emotion that has been shown over the past couple of days. I think the best way to tell this story is to take a closer look at the people who continue to file by Mayor Caligiuri's coffin.
That got to me only afterwards, only after we covered his funeral and such. I broke down a little bit.
What are you going to miss most about the television business?
Well, I'm going to miss guys like you, Bob. The people who work in this station are phenomenal. They work long hours, we're short-staffed, we have demanding deadlines, and they are fabulous people. And I love them all, and I'm going to miss them very much. And you owe me a round of golf, so I better see you.
Oh, don't worry. Since it's your
retire.
retirement, I'm going to give you
All
strokes too. I know you've been trying to clamor for strokes. You're going to eventually get your strokes.
I am going to. That's one of the things happening in the retirement. I do have to lower that handicap.
Well, you will. You'll have time to do everything you want to do, and you deserve it after all these years. What are you, looking back now and analyzing your career, what are you most proud of about Paul Martino, the anchor, Paul Martino, the reporter?
You know, I think one of the things I'm proud of is just becoming a part of Pittsburgh. You know, again, I came here like I went to WSIU as this brash young man. I had a 3-year contract, and I said, well, after 3 years, I'm going to go to New York, or I'm going to do this. But I fell in love with this city. This is a great place for me. I will always live here, except maybe a couple of months during the winter. But my 3 children were raised here. They still live here. I think becoming a part of the city, I'm involved with a lot of charity events, as you are. I have a band here. I have a beautiful bride. And I just love the city, and I'm glad that I became a part of it. This move was one of the best things I did in my life, coming here.
Well, there's no question. I think people embraced you because they saw how much you were involved in the community, and we salute you for that. So this band of yours, you're going to have a big blowout celebration with the band, and
All right.
are you going to sing at your own retirement party?
Here comes a shameless plug. July 11th, the Syria Shrine, a retirement party for me. It's called the Italian Invasion. You got to come to this.
Oh, are you kidding?
John Vento.
Oh, my.
The Granati brothers, and Norm Nardini, and Paul Martino. And yeah, it's going to be a big jam session, and they say it's my retirement party, so Stacy Smith didn't get that.
Just doesn't have a band. You're going to sing at your own party. You got to get Stacy on that.
I will sing.
Are you going to miss the makeup?
Yeah, the makeup
we
doesn't
have to
bother
put it
me.
on too much.
Yeah, we do have makeup on. That's another dirty secret. We are men who wear makeup.
But it comes off rather easily, too.
Yeah.
The other part about being on television is you got to be fashion forward. You have to understand, man. You're making an impression on someone, so you got to bring it every single night. We compare socks a lot, Paul, and I always looked at that as a personal challenge.
All the way down to the footwear is important, right?
You got to have the socks and the shoes, right? Even though nobody sees the socks and the shoes.
Well, you and I see them. But I got to tell you, it's been tough working with you because you got game, man. You got some clothes. So I had to step up my game, you know? It was a wardrobe. And then now you've got Richie Walsh with all his clothes.
We have a little competition up there, but
just a bit.
My wife takes care of that stuff, though. People say, where do you get your clothes? I say, off the bed.
I have a wife influence on that, too.
You got to do it. But, I mean, that's a big part of it, isn't it? I still think, to me, it's always been an honor going into somebody's living room, like we talked about, having them watch you. I want to make sure it's a good impression. I think fashion says that about people.
I think it brings you some credibility. You know, you care about your job, what you're doing. So I think it's professional to dress up.
And you did a pocket hanky today, and I didn't do that. See, I left it behind. But this is your day.
You didn't even wear a tie.
Because I thought we were going to hang out. You know, I thought you were going to bring your musician group in here. We're going to have a little fun.
But that's later. That's
later. Okay, well, we'll do that for sure.
Bob, you're always sharp. Well, can I have some of your old suits?
Listen, I just want to say congratulations. It's been fun working with you. I'm going to miss the opportunities we had in the studio together, and I'm sure everyone out there in Pittsburgh. Do you have a message for the people of Pittsburgh after all these years of going into their living rooms?
I would just say that I hope I informed you about your neighborhood. I hope I enlightened you a little bit, and I hope sometimes I brought a smile to your face. And what an honor and a privilege to come into your home. It was. I love Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh loves you. Congratulations, Paul.
Thank you, Bob.
Outstanding career.